when you think of somebody like David Goggins or Dan Pena, you got to do it, and you motherfucker, get out there, fucking hustle, push, 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 push. Because you said earlier that entrepreneurs are basically raising themselves. To be an entrepreneur, you have to grow up. And that's true. I think it's a brilliant thing. You know, I want to quote you on that. But then you see these guys like Dan Pena, and you could argue they're growing themselves up. Get up there, fucking do it, motherfucker. That kind of energy, right? What do you think of that kind of energy long term? Oh, that way of being, or that what is it that because there's something they've got going on.
Yeah.
I'll just say it. I personally think that they're telling people to do this energy that doesn't work for everybody, but works for them because they love the push.
Yeah.
They love the suffering.
Yeah.
They're getting turned on for the suffering. So.
It's, first of all, such an incredible question, and I want to honor that fully, because this is one of the most dangerous things that I'm seeing out there on social media. Social media has made it possible for anyone to amplify their voice and build a platform, and that comes with lots of pros and cons. Have a lot of love and nurture for people like David Goggins and Dan Pena. I just want to give David Goggins a hug. And I'll tell you why. Because that man is under-nurtured. If you think about the message he shares, which is relentless, ruthless discipline, you got to push yourself harder, you got to, almost to a masochistic degree, where nothing's ever good enough, where he's never good enough, he has to do more, he has to do more, he has to do more, he has to push himself past and incur vast amounts of pain. Whose voice is that? That's the voice of a very critical father. That's the voice of the father for whom nothing's ever good enough, whose love is conditional for his son. And that's the voice that's been imprinted in his consciousness that he uses to drive himself. And I see this in entrepreneurs all the time. And the reason why he's so popular is because when people listen to him, they hear the voice of their own father, for whom they had to work extra hard just to be good enough, just to be loved, just to be acknowledged, just to be appreciated, just to be someone. And that reminder is what makes him so popular, because that voice just slides right into a similar shaped hole in their heart, in their mind, in their consciousness, for a parental figure who is never satisfied with them, who needs them to do more, be more, achieve more, just to love them. And I think this is one of the most dangerous things in society right now, because it's not a survival of the fittest. It's the survival of the nurtured.
What do you mean by that?
So we're conditioned to think that the evolutionary function is animal that is the fittest, that is the most fierce, that is the most competitive, that can gobble up the most resources, is the one who's going to win.
Yes, yes.
But that's actually not true. Actually, in evolution, the survival comes from the ability of an animal to cooperate. And that comes down to empathy, that comes down to nurture, that comes down to love. And we have an epidemic of role models in the world right now who don't love themselves, who borderline hate themselves, for whom nothing they do is good enough. And that voice is getting replicated through the internet leverage machine, and millions and billions of people are getting influenced and programmed to operate the same way. And actually, the best survival strategy in the world, how deep do you want to go?
As deep as you want to go. That's what this channel's about.
Okay, so this is some of the stuff that I
love it, by the way.
Most obsessed with. Thank you. And I appreciate you so much, because my favorite thing in life is to have conversations like these.
Same here.
Beautiful. So I'm more than anything a student, and I'm a student of the universe. And I'm just so humbled by how perfect this whole thing is that we live inside of. My whole existence is dedicated to finding out how we as human beings can thrive on every level.
With no effort.
With no effort.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I've figured out is that our ability to experience the most amazing life hinges on our ability to lower entropy in our system. Entropy is basically the tending towards disorder that any system experiences. So if we take a house and we come back to this house 50 years from now, weather, the sun, natural, factors would have worn down this house, and it would be in some level of disrepair. To prevent the house from being worn down, we have to make investments. We got to, give it a new coat of paint on the outside. We got to maybe, buttress up the foundations, 10 years from now. We got to, do some repairs because some wires get broken or whatever. Clearly, I don't know much about construction or houses, but everything is a system. We are a biological system, a psychological system. Businesses are a system, or a relationship or marriage is a system, a family is a system. And so we're basically a bunch of systems inside systems. Every system has a certain amount of entropy inside inherently. So if we let ourselves go, what happens? We get fat and unhealthy, right?
Yeah. You need some level of tension to keep growing.
Exactly. So we got to make that investment. So we got to exercise every day. We got to eat clean. We got to pay attention to ourselves. So all of these are ways to reduce entropy. One of the biggest sources of entropy for a human system comes from their relationship to themselves. So one of the reasons why being is so hard for most people, just sit in a room by yourself, no phone, no media, no stimulation, and just enjoy your own company. Madness. That's a nightmare. It's really hard for most people because they cannot even be with themselves, right? Why? Because there's too much entropy. That entropy comes from the relationship someone has with themselves. A manifestation of the relationship that someone has with themselves shows up in their self-talk. So when you talk about David Goggins, when you talk about someone who is whipping themselves into doing better, into being more, into succeeding, into accomplishing, into working out or whatever it might be, that is creating a lot of entropy. And it's very hard for a system with a lot of entropy to succeed. And I say succeed with air quotes because success is very relative. It depends on what, our goal is. But if you take a relationship, a lot of relationship entropy basically looks like a lot of conflict. It also looks like the two people in the relationship not being on the same page, not being aligned on the same values, not having the same vision or mission or where they're trying to go and how they want to live. And over time, this entropy will break the relationship apart, right? So we have to keep making investments. Let's have conversation. Let's talk through stuff. Let's sit with the difficult emotions. Let me hear you. I want you to hear me. This is what I'm feeling. This is when we keep doing that and when we align, we reduce the entropy, and guess what happens? We have a better feeling relationship. Both people feel more close, more connected, more intimate with each other, with themselves, and the relationship thrives. And it's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with any other system, with our physical system. And in this world, we reward this cutthroat competition. We reward zero-sum games. We reward people who are basically sacrificing every aspect of themselves to achieve something. And I think that incentive structure is extremely dangerous because actually what we should be rewarding is, hey, are you really in tune with your emotions? Hey, do you actually really love yourself and you care about yourself and you take care of yourself? With clean food and water and movement and exercise, but also with the words you speak to yourself. We can apply the love languages back to ourselves. Like, are you speaking these words of appreciation to yourself? Are you doing these acts of service for yourself, right? What is our relationship with ourselves, and because that is the centerpiece of our entire existence. And we went down this whole rabbit hole from the whole David Goggins thing, but to me, if I was to boil a single measure out of how someone can look at the state of their life and evaluate success, it would be through the lens of entropy. And I find that this works in business, it works in relationships, it works with, how we operate within ourselves. And anything that reduces entropy it feels amazing. That's the direction we want to go. Being in this state of self-love, being in a state of contribution where we're thinking less of ourselves and really thinking about other people and making an impact, that is the lowest entropy state that a human can be in.